Remember when everyone else told you that Acheron needs her signature light cone to do this? Well, that's me using Good Night Sleep Well, hitting 1,000,000 damage. And later in this video, I'll present footage of more free-to-play options like Fermata. In today's video, I'll break down every misconception you have about why Acheron is not free-to-play friendly, showcasing how to play her featuring some of her best builds, light cones, teams, and more. If you're on the fence about whether or not you should pull Acheron, just let me borrow your time for a good, I don't know, 20 minutes. Acheron's playstyle doesn't necessarily change depending on the team, but how you go about engaging her ultimate does. What I mean by this is Acheron's only goal is to get 9 slash stacks or slash dreams as often as she can in order to dish out her ultimate damage back to back. This is way easier to do when you've built your account for more than just one archetype. For starters, her traces have some serious multipliers packed behind them. I was comfortable clearing under 3 cycles with just 888, but I recently learned that a 0.8% defense drop makes such a big difference that I'm going to recommend you max her out. I'll explain her kit in the order that I'd want you to operate it, and by me like telling you to do that, I just mean that this is how I advise it. Red Oni is her first bonus ability, which immediately starts the battle off with 5 stacks of the Slash Dream and Crimson Knots. It also gives Ascendance, turning what would be 9 stacks into an overcapped 12. Inside the battle, you'll notice where those Crimson stacks go, and contrary to some thoughts, you don't want to spread these knots out. You should aim to stack all 9 on top of one enemy for as much burst damage as possible. If they happen to die early, the stacks just jump to the next elite anyway, thanks to her talent. That leads us into her skill, Octobolt Flash, which that name is kind of high. But point being is that this is how Acheron personally gains 1 stack. And with the use of other light cones like her signature or Incessant Rain, she can gain 2. And if you're thinking to yourself that Acheron is the only one who can gain these slash dreams, then she isn't. This is where her talent kicks into play. When any unit inflicts debuffs on an enemy target, Acheron gains 1 stack of slash and applies 1 Crimson Knot. Yes, this includes enemies like the fishes exploding on their own allies, which have nothing to do with your own turn, which means you can gain stacks outside of your turn or any of your allies' turns. Unfortunately, you won't be able to use someone like Silverwolf to gain multiple stacks at once, since she applies multiple debuffs at once. It's 1 debuff per that instance. So you would have to do a basic attack or a skill, and then that would be 1 debuff. And then you would pop her ultimate, and since ultimates don't count as the same turn, that would be your second debuff or your second stack. It's not the worst thing in the world though, since you'll be building your team correctly, so you'll always have an ultimate every cycle minimum. And now that you know how to gain stacks, you want to hit 9 in the smartest way possible. 9 unlocks her ultimate, and this talent reduces all type res of every single enemy on the field by 20%. Imagine how deadly that's going to be if you have an E1 Swan or even under Ruan Mei's ult. Acheron's own ultimate is it's a lot, and in order to not spit a bunch of numbers in your ear, I'll just show you. Acheron activates Domain Expansion, Slash Dream, Prize in Red, and unleashes the first Rain Blade attack against a single target, while also removing 3 stacks of Crimson Knots. And I love how every time I say Domain Expansion, their names for these skills get more and more JJK-like. Rain Blade has its own damage multiplier, and removing Crimson Knot from that enemy immediately deals 15% of Acheron's attack to everyone else. Now do this 2 more times because our Domain Expansion unleashes 3 of those Rain Blades, and that amplifies the 15% to 60%. Then finally, she does 1 big Giga Slash against everyone that tears a rift in the space-time continuum while removing any remaining Crimson Knots. If that's not scary enough for you, let me not forget that each of those slash instances are dealing over 300% lightning damage and attack to everything in space. But wait, there's more. Her next bonus ability is called Thunder Core, and this stupid expansion jutsu adds even more damage to not only the domain expansion, but she carries up to 90% of that damage increase outside of the domain for 3 whole turns. On a character like Acheron, that's basically permanent. She even adds 6 more slashes of lightning damage to a random enemy that has the same multiplier as the ultimate damage just for triggering the move. And don't go pulling her yet. Just wait, all right? I almost forgot the most important passive to her kit. The Abyss. TLDR, if you bring 1 Nihility unit on the team that doesn't include Acheron, she gains 115% finality damage to everything she does. If you bring a second Nihility unit, that number jumps up to 160% finality damage of the original damage she was supposed to do. And you're hearing me say this word finality damage, which isn't a part of Honkai Star Rail at all. Nowhere in the game does it say that, but this is a new term to most of us, but not to the Honkai Impact players. To my understanding, finality damage is multiplicative, if I'm not mistaken, and basically means if Acheron was supposed to do 50k, well, once you tack on the Abyss's passive, that 50k goes to 80k. Now that number is obviously made up and it's pretty big, and I'm only using it as an easy example, but that's how this passive works. This character is dumb, and I mean that in the best way possible. If I had to give you a priority of leveling things up, it would go ult, talent, skill. This time, I think it'll be pretty cool to start with the relics first. Pioneer, Diver of Waters, is currently her best relic set. The 2-piece increases damage against debuff enemies by 12% on top of all the other damage increases from her kit. The 4-piece increases crit rate by 4% and crit damage by 12% to enemies with at least 3 debuffs. If Acheron touches an enemy, they are considered debuffed. Since your whole team should be built around maxing out debuffs every opportunity, this 4-piece effect will always be active, and due to Pioneer's final effect, all of those numbers will double. Yes, that means you have a free 8% crit rate and 24% crit damage just for playing Acheron the way she's supposed to be played. Her next best relic set will be the Prisoner in Deep Confinement. One of my favorites, or technically Brilliant Stars, is also an option if you're rocking Silverwolf. A 2-piece prisoner increases her attack by 12%, and the 4-piece gives a 6% defense shred for every dot that enemy suffers from. The perfect partner for this is Black Swan due to her ult's Epiphany, but Kafka and Sampo work amazing here too. Now in regards to the Quantum set, this is purely one of those if you have this already over the other, then use it type of scenarios, because 20% defense shred plus Acheron's own 20% defense shred can be kind of nutty. But if I'm still giving you my honest opinion, I really want to tell you Pioneer is still the best. Now your final options are the standard 2-piece mixes of relic sets like 2-piece Messenger and 2-piece Pioneer. While this is good for the moment, I don't think they overcome a full 4-piece set due to what those bring to the table, especially Pioneer. Planar ornaments are also straightforward. The brand new Izumo Gensei set or Inert Salcedo. Izumo increases both your attack and crit rate by 12% just for having another teammate on the team that just happens to be the same path, which Acheron wants you to do. In fact, you need to. Inert still gives you an 8% increase in crit rate, which is wonderful in helping you achieve 100%, but it also increases your ultimate damage by 15%, which is stronger than Glamith's 12% damage increase that requires you to be at 135 speed. The reason I'm not mentioning Glamith's 160 speed boost is because genuinely Acheron's not hitting that without a lot of work. And I mean a lot. While it's not impossible, Acheron honestly just doesn't care about speed unless you're somehow forcing her into some weird harmony only comps for whatever reason. If you play her correctly, she's guaranteed her ult at least once a cycle. If you play her at her best, she's guaranteed it twice a cycle, and that's huge. For main stats, you're shooting for a crit rate body, attack boots, lightning or attack percent damage orb, depending on your light cone, and an attack percent rope. I know a lot of you heard that her signature light cone is mandatory in order to perform, and if I could laugh right now, I would, because genuinely that's just a bold-faced lie. The most sensible way to take in this information is probably like this. With her signature light cone, you'll have an easier time hitting 1 million damage. Without her signature light cone, you can still reach 1 million damage, but getting there takes way more work. That being said, none of that matters for a free-to-play player when you'll achieve the same results anyway, but let me break it all down. Along the passing shore is her signature light cone, and this beauty is absolutely deserving of its praise. The light cone gives Acheron a free 36% crit damage, which is the first of the Nihility path to do this, and once you add the 14% crit damage from her own traces, she's already at 100% crit damage with 0 substats. After that, she basically hits everything she touches for nearly 50% extra crit damage. Add the final fact that Mirage Fizzle counts as a debuff, which then triggers her passive talent that grants her another slash stack, and then that means Acheron gets 2 of them instead of 1 when using her skill now. There's no real question why this light cone is her best in slot, and just like investing in your traces, picking up a strong light cone option for any of your main DPS units helps take away the RNG factor from relic grinding. Incessant Rain is my personal choice for second best in slot, and I'll explain exactly why. But Good Night Sleep Well could also kind of match in here for second best. it really just comes down to personal preference. While effect hit rate normally isn't something you're aiming for, it doesn't hurt to passively collect either. This is mainly due to the fact that the game has been stealth buffing enemies since version 1.6, and even though this light cone has a 100% chance to apply its ether code effect onto any enemy getting hit, it still isn't actually 100%. That's where the 24% extra hit rate comes into play. This next bit about the wearer dealing damage to any enemy with 3 or more debuffs, that's not an issue either, since you'll constantly be trying to stack debuffs onto the enemy for 9 crimson stacks anyway. This is another way to get free crit stats, in particular 12% crit rate. That can take your natural 70 to an easy 82. Then with her ideal relics, you're effectively hitting 100%. Oh, and ether code gives you 2 slash stacks from using her skill, just like her signature. Don't sleep on Silver's light cone if you have it. Next up, if you happen to have an S3 or higher good night and sleep well, then it falls right into my 3rd best light cone option for Acheron. And lucky for you, this light cone is currently on the banner. It's a very straightforward light cone. 18 to 24% extra damage for every debuff the enemy has, stacking up to 3 times. Unfortunately, you don't receive any extra stats like crit rate or damage or even attack percent, nor does it provide you with the 2nd stack like the previous 2, but it does let you easily rock an attack percent orb while spitting out the 2nd highest damage out of all the light cone options available. My final pick is technically Patience is All You Need, which is Kafka's signature, but to be honest, I didn't feel like that was fair for the majority of players at all, and instead decided to test even more possibilities. When I mentioned this in my light cone preview video a week ago, I was just spitballing the idea in real time. I didn't think I'd actually bring it to the table. Fermata really packs a punch. Now this ain't like a Mike Tyson punch, it's more like I kind of like got into a boxing match or a fight outside on the street with some of the friends. You know what I'm saying? I tested this light cone on my free-to-play account to eliminate most of the premium options, and Fermata really opens up your brain to other team comps. It works with characters like Ruan Mei, Black Swan, Silver, Kafka, Serval, and Sampo. The extra break effect is great for teams that feature Ruan Mei, but the real damage comes from enemies that are afflicted with shock or wind shear. In particular, your go-to options will be Sampo or Black Swan for wind shear and Kafka or Serval for shock. Now, Serval isn't a Nihility character, so pay attention to that, but she packs enough of a punch on her own and extends all the shocks given that you would never lose the buff. Swan is one of Acheron's best teammates, period, and I'd highly advise you using this combo together if you have it. Ultimately, the rest of the options begin to create more specific teams that I know the community is not ready to accept, regardless of if they're viable or not. I still highly advocate to pull on the light cone banner, even if it's just a couple pulls to get better options, but at the end of the day, this is your choice. I'm just here to tell you that out of the 16 current Nihility light cones, she can effectively use 7 of them. Now, if you don't have at least 3 out of that 7, then maybe you don't really like Acheron the way you thought you did. I don't know what you're gonna do when I show you that I 0 cycled with that Resolutions light cone. Before we jump into the team building section, I need to preface that I'm only going to talk about 3-ish teams in this guide. I'll talk about every other team in a completely separate video releasing later this week. And I know that might seem like a Debbie Downer, but the reason for this is because contrary to popular rumors, Acheron works in like 7 other teams. And if I showcase them all right now, it'll turn into its own video. That being said, here are some of my favorite Acheron focused teams. Acheron, Pela, Black Swan, Gallagher. You guys can come up with the name in the comments down below. Pela and Swan works as an amazing combo, especially right now being on element. Defense shred from the both of them hit almost 100% against 3+ enemies, which significantly boosts Acheron's overall damage thanks to how her domain expansion works. Both Pela and Swan work as SP neutral units and should be ran faster than Acheron. And then my boy Gallagher's a sleeper pick. This guy fulfills the healer role in such a unique way that not only helps him solo sustain, but it also gives him an emergency 2 to 3 slash dreams in a single instance. This basically helps Acheron get to ultimates every single cycle. In the event you don't have Swan though, you could replace her with Sampo, but the defense shred drops down tremendously and Sampo's job completely changes. I guess that's something else that I should probably add before we continue with the rest of the teams, is that these are actual teams and not just slapping things onto the team so that you guys know how I am, but if you don't, I build actual teams. I don't build things that just serve no purpose. And that's incredibly important for Acheron out of all characters because of what her requirements are. You essentially don't want anyone on the team to be a waste. Next up is going to be Acheron, Pela, Silver, and Trend of the Universal Market. Acheron gets ult in basically 2 of the teammates' actions, granting her an immediate damage boost before her turn even starts. Pela's quick ult gain and SP neutrality, along with the Resolutions light cone, is a 56% defense shred, active almost all the time. Then you have Silverwolf, who can apply any element ultimate safely while blasting the elite enemies with debuffs 2 to 4 times a cycle. Now, Trend of the Universal Market is the golden thing on this team. It works best on Fire MC, but the low shields make playing him a lot less favorable for anything more than 2 cycles or against Sam. In the event you don't have Fire MC built, like me, you could use Japard or even Fu Xuan and get the same results. You just don't have the taunt action, and that's a little unfortunate because taunt is nasty. Regardless, after you collect all of this and build the team properly, Acheron is guaranteed at least 1.5 ultimates per cycle, and depending on how many times they hit Trend of the Universal Market, that turns into 2 ultimates per cycle. Last up is, of course, you guys know me. How could I not have Kafka in a team guide? That's crazy, right? Acheron, Swan, Kafka, Ruan Mei. This team is less about hitting 1 million damage and more about just blitzing the enemy as fast as you can. Fast Kafka plus Swan gives Acheron her ultimate every 1.8-ish in the first wave and guaranteed twice in the second wave. Because of Kafka and Swan giving you all the sacks you need, Acheron can actually run Shining Pearls for her double sacks plus defense shred, which helps everyone on the team, on top of whatever Mei is doing to boost the team. And you might be thinking to yourself, like, why would I run resolutions on my Acheron when I want her to do the most damage? Well, when you're getting ultimates 2 to 3 times, depending on the other teammates on your team, it doesn't really matter. And still 0 cycles, by the way. So it's not like you're gonna be sitting there forever because they're dead. And that's the entire point of why I pointed out all these teams. They die. The enemies are dead. There's no 3 cycle plus with any of these teams. If you're using 3 cycles plus, you're not playing the team correctly, and that's okay. I love these teams. I love all 7 or 8 different teams that I've come up with Acheron because they force you to think how you want to pilot this team to accomplish this goal. And all of them, I was not able to 0 cycle with. Fucker. Oh my God. But I was able to go 3 cycles or under with every single team. And I only used the signature light cone on one of them. She's not as restrictive as people said. And as the guide comes to a close, of course, I'm not gonna leave you guys hanging without answering the age-old question, E1 or S1. Both of these options are strong and basically offer the opposite of each other. If, for whatever reason, you have an absurdly large amount of crit damage without her signature light cone, then the E1 will be more valuable to you because missing any amount of crits hurts inside of her domain expansion. E1 plus a crit rate body with her preferred relic set will put you at 75-ish% crit rate with 0 substats. Adding just 3 to 4 more will grant you the 100% so that you never miss a crit, and that can be more beneficial to you versus having 236% crit damage but missing all your crits. On the other hand, the S1 is so one of a kind that just having it grants you access to an easy mode Acheron with more damage output on her own. So both options are amazing, but I personally value the S1 more than the E1 because the light cone frees up my RNG grind on relics and it's hot. You don't need either of them, but that makes building around her so much easier. And with all of that, we're done. Acheron is officially my favorite DPS in the game. I'm saying it now. I didn't expect so many players to try downplaying her as much as I've seen, but pushing my bias aside, I genuinely don't know how anyone can look at this character and then tell other people she's less than valuable. Her team options are not restrictive to the point that a player can't build them with ease. She has amazing damage output with all of those teams that I mentioned and then some, and she works with almost half of the entire Nihility light cones available to her. Acheron is absolutely worth picking up if you have the means to do so. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for some future videos where I go into more detail on how to pilot Acheron correctly in a number of teams. I can't say my user outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube, but if you want to see more content preparing you for 2.1, then check out one of these videos here. Smell you later.